All right, an official welcome to everyone who's joining us live or watching at a later date. This is CINC's Who Do I Call Today webinar. My name is Kayla Priest, and I'm excited to be here joined by my co-host, Mike Davis. We'll be talking about prospecting and following up best practices. But before we jump into a site and take a look at exactly how to prospect and follow up in CINC, I want to share this information with you here. Now, you can actually find this PDF readily available if you do a Google search for the title Best Practices for Lead Response Management. So this is something that CINC took a look at years ago when the study was released, and it continues to inform our best practices today. So what this is, to break down that long title, is how do internet leads like to be called. So our focus for today is going to be on phone calls for prospecting and following up. Of course, we do recommend texts and emails, but for a new lead, we actually recommend that all of those are automated, which is another webinar that we host later in the week. But for today, we're going to be talking about phone calls, and that's what this study looked at. So over 3 years, I believe this was done by InsideSales.com and a research fellow at MIT. And then it was published in the Harvard Business Review, which means that it was reviewed and approved before it was published. And what it did is it took a look at these 15,000 leads, 100,000 call attempts, and said, what times did leads like to answer? How many times did we have to call before they answered? And it gave us some really great data when we are prospecting and following up on internet leads. So I actually like to start off by looking at number 3 first. We're going to hit back up at the top and cover 1 and 2 as well, but I want to start with 3 and 4. We're going to work backwards. The reason we're working backwards is that number 3, response time. This is when a new lead comes in, how quickly do we make our first dial out? And how quickly does that impact if the lead answers? I'm going to have a little word crazy at the top until I find my flow, but stick with me. Contacts made from first dials. In other words, a new lead came in, we made the phone call. When we called, does it matter for if the lead answers or not? And what it found is yes. And we can see here that we have the best time to respond being within 5 minutes. But notice that it's not 100% true that if you make a call in the first 5 minutes, you're going to always get an answer. What we know is that you're more likely to get an answer if you call in the first 5 minutes, but it's not foolproof. You will occasionally have people who don't answer. And I would even say that nowadays this might have gone down a little bit because people do, of course, have caller ID on their cell phones, and we're getting a lot of scam likely calls. I know I get a ton. So people are a little bit more wary of answering a phone call from a number that they don't recognize, but it doesn't mean that they won't answer that phone call. What we find too is that as a lot of people are working from home more, that actually answer rates have kind of gone up a little bit recently too. So maybe it's evening itself out there. What this is saying that if you do get a new lead within your business hours, and I'd say that would be between like 8 a.m. to some people say 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., whatever times you're making phone calls in, if you get a new lead, call as quickly as possible, because we have a 10 times decrease in answers after the first 5 minutes. And if you kind of ask yourself, why is that true? If we call super quickly, likely they're still on your site looking at homes and they haven't moved on to something else. They haven't moved on to a task at work or something, to take care of their home or children or a hobby or whatever it may be. They're still engaged on your site. Therefore, they're not busy with something else. Now, as I said, this is not foolproof. We are going to have some people that do not answer on that first dial. And before I actually go on to number 4, I do want to make a quick note that a lot of times we have some people that say, well, I call everyone in the first 5 minutes and it wasn't working. And so now I just text right away. And we find that contact rates go way down when that happens, and appointment rates go way down when that happens. So again, we do like to text, but we like to automate those texts. And you want to make your time, your day-to-day time to be in your phone calls. So let's go ahead and move on to number 4 now, and looping back to Sometimes you're going to call in the first 5 minutes and someone doesn't answer. So what do we do then? And that is when persistence comes into play. So chance of making contact, we can see here percentage of that chance, so 20 up to 100%. And then the number of calls here on the bottom. If you like math, that x-axis, right? Number of phone calls on the x-axis there. And we can see that it is at its highest point on the 6th dial. So what's that saying is we have a 90% chance of getting an answer on the 6th dial. Now, does that mean that, again, it's not 100%? So does that mean that everyone's going to answer if we called them at least 6 times? No, but the majority of your leads will if we just stay persistent. Now, like I said, I've been training for a long time. I've met and spoken with a lot of CINC clients, and I know that sometimes they are closing people who registered 100 days ago, 200 days ago, 1,500 days ago in some cases. You know, not everyone is ready to move right away. So it could be that those people, it might take 10 dials, 20 dials. When we get into the CINC system and I show you the best practices for prospecting there, I'm going to show you how to find the people that we are suggesting that you call today. So you're not having to comb through your entire database and call everyone every single day and hope that something sticks. I'm going to show you how to make your persistence dials count by calling people when CINC calls them out as a good person to call today. So we always make at least 6 call attempts, but I don't stop if someone still has not answered. As long as they're within those good people to call today, I'm giving them a call. This is also why one of our best practices is not to leave a voicemail right away. So we actually don't like to leave a voicemail, especially on the first dial, but I'm going to say definitely not in the first 6 calls. Now, I might even wait a little longer. I might even say I want to call 10 times or 15 times before I leave a voicemail. And at this point, I always get, well, I like to leave a voicemail because it's more personal and I want them to get that personal touch from me. But it actually can hurt more than it helps when we're prospecting on an internet lead who is a person, but they are a stranger. They don't know us. They don't know why we're calling, and they don't know how we can actually help them. And so when we leave a voicemail, most of the time it's, hi, this is Kayla calling from ABC Realty. I saw you registered on my site, and I wanted to see if there's anything I could do to help with your home search. If there's anything I can do to help, please give me a call. And we leave our number and we say bye and we hang up. Now, I just committed a bunch of faux pas in that voicemail. I said my brokerage name. I said that they registered on my site. I said, is there anything I can do to help? That's not an open-ended question. And what we find is when we leave that voicemail in the first few dials, a lot of times the lead says, I don't know this person. I don't know where they got my information. I don't want to talk to them. And the ball is in their court to decide if they call us back or not. Whereas we're then sitting back and waiting for them to give us a call back, right? So we want to be the ones in control of the situation in those first few dials. So we don't leave a voicemail right away. When it is time to leave a voicemail, again, maybe 10 or 15 calls in, then we're leaving a voicemail that drops a little bit of value and gives them a reason to call us back. So if I know that the lead is looking in Marietta, I might say, hey, Mike, this is Kayla from the Marietta Home Search site. I saw you're looking at some homes in the area and I wanted to connect. There's a great, and then here's some options. Great open house this weekend. Awesome home that just had a price reduction. Probably not likely in this these markets, but maybe. There's a great house that just came on the market that I think you'll love. How do you want me to send that to you? I can call, text, or I can text or email it to you. Just give me a call back and let's make sure it's a good fit and let me know how you want to get it. But we're dropping a little nugget to interest them to then have them give us a call back. But we have a call to action, which is let me know how you want to get it. I want to see if this is a good fit for you. And then we are more likely to get a call back in that instance. Now, really briefly, I want to show you this graph down at the bottom. I love this because if we kind of pretend that these, this is the top graph and this is the bottom graph, if you fold them down on top of each other, they almost kind of fit in like perfectly together. And I think it's really telling that this average call attempts by reps. So this is how many calls agents actually make. Look at how few people or excuse me, how low the chances on that first dial and how many people actually make it to the 6th. Not many. Not very many agents are making it to that golden 6th dial. And then in fact, we have a little note over here on the right that over 30% of leads are never contacted at all. So when Mike and I are doing site reviews and kind of productivity checks with agents and team leads, we often find that they call twice, say, well, the lead never answered. Maybe they leave a voicemail and then they say, well, I'm just going to text them. Or clearly they, don't want to talk, so I'm not going to bother them. And that is not the right attitude to have. You are not bothering anyone who registered on your site. You are simply providing them a service. They signed up on your site to be able to see homes, and they cannot buy one without you. And if it's not you that they're going to be working with, it's going to be your competition. And so your competition may be one of these agents who's only calling 2 times and giving up. So I want you guys to be the ones that are the persistence people, and you're consistently being persistent. And so what does it mean to consistently be persistent? Now, so we're going to look at graph number 2 here. Best times to make contact. I want you to consistently make dials, consistently time block time to make dials in these 2 windows of great best times to make contact. And we see that the top one here, the best time to call, is between 4 and 5 p.m. And you can even extend that out until 6 p.m. So best time to make calls, sometime between 4 and 6 p.m. And our agents who have the most success are calling an hour in that window. So for example, 4:30 to 5:30. If you are in a time where you're a large commuter town, for example, and people are in their cars later, you could even say 5:30 to 6:30, but sometime between 4 and 6. Now, contacts made from first dials also were high in the morning from 8 to 9. And again, you can extend that out kind of out until 10. So an hour, again, time blocking sometime between 8 to 10. And if you're not familiar with time blocking, it's simply making an appointment with yourself. So having a standing appointment Monday through Friday from say 8 to 9 and 4:30 to 5:30 to make your prospecting calls. Now I'm going to make it make sense in just a moment of what you do when you are in with those windows. Who exactly do you call? Where do you get started? That's what we're going to take a look at in the site in just a moment. Now, all this comes with a caveat, right? We actually do Power Hour at CINC University, and Power Hour is simply on day 3 after our agents have gone through conversion day, learning, scripting, role playing, exactly what to say and how to say it. We actually do Power Hour where they are calling their leads live. And if you've ever been there, you know that it's really powerful because consistently we are getting a 33% contact to appointment set ratio. So that actually happens around 1 to 2 p.m. And as you can see, that is a low time. So what I want to really stress here is if you cannot do it in that 8 to 10 or 4 to 6 window, it's not a good excuse to not do it. If you only have 30 minutes one day, 30 minutes is better than no minutes. So I use these best times to make contact as a great framework for someone who can set those time blocks up. But if you have some major emergency one day and you cannot do those calls, but you have 30 minutes in between appointments, I want you to make the calls regardless of the time. If you are looking for more structure around your prospecting and to increase your appointments, then absolutely persistently and consistently make the dials using the time blocks. But if you have some time to steal some extra calls in, don't worry about what time it is. Of course, maybe worry if it's midnight and don't make calls at midnight. But as long as you're within those business hours, you just have to be hungry and persistently and consistently do your prospecting. Now, best days to make contact, graph number 1. This is not a huge one. Monday through Friday, we want to be time blocking. I would say if you had some additional time throughout the week and you wanted to add in some additional call blocks, maybe, business for the next couple of months is looking really low. Maybe you got a new list of sellers and you're trying to go out and get some listings. Wednesday and Thursday are great times when people typically answer a little bit more. Now, this is from first dials as well, but I would say that this pretty much applies to your calls, your second, third, fourth, fifth, et cetera, calls as well. And also keep in mind that you can call on weekends. Just try and see what works in your market, what works in your area. I have some teams that love to call on the weekends and some that say they don't get a great response and they would rather keep those weekends to, showings and other appointments. But, maybe you have an ISA, you might want to have them making those calls on the weekends. So I think we have some questions. Mike, what should we touch on here before we move into the site?
Yes. So one of the questions that came through was in response to, I'd posted a link to this help document on the best response or the best practice to lead response management, and the PDF wasn't linked. We did flip to a new company and it looks like that is some missing content. So I also posted the best practices PDF directly into the chat. So if you're looking for that, check it out. If you don't see it, let me know and I can post it again because I can't tell if, depending on when you got here, what information you see in the chat. So if you don't see that PDF, let me know and I can add it back again. And then the next question that came through was for time efficiency, what would you say is a good amount of calls to make? Are we focusing on the number of dials or the time blocking? Kind of what's the most important there to get the most impact with least amount of effort?
Yeah, if you are time blocking, I would get through as many dials as I can. We find, in that time block, and when we are doing Power Hour at CINC, we find that agents who are using the CINC dialer are able to make a lot more phone calls. So in other words, they have more attempts, more at-bats if you're a sports person. So using the CINC dialer, which is a single line dialer, is going to be a way to make you a little bit more efficient. But even if you are simply typing the number into your phone or calling through the app, making sure that you are just consistently staying on task in your time blocks, you're going to make enough dials. If we're talking about, for accountability's sake, having benchmarks or goals, it really depends on the agents and the team's overall goals. So a lot of people say, I don't really care how many calls you make. I care more about the appointments made and the appointments kept. So a good way to kind of have call goals is to start tracking for yourself every dial you make, if it leads to an answer, and if that answer leads to an appointment, and figure out how many calls you have to make to get one set appointment. And that will kind of help you know if you are doing enough. So even if you currently don't have a call goal, I think it is a good idea because it will help you know if you are on track. And to me, the best way to figure that out is to kind of reverse engineer, like I just said, how many appointments do I need? And you'll only know how many calls it takes to make that number of appointments if you're tracking for yourself. And it can be as simple as a piece of paper on your desk and a tick mark when you make a call, and and then another column, a tick mark when you make contact, and then another column, a tick mark when you set an appointment. And that way you can see how many calls it takes for you to get that appointment. Did that answer everything, Mike?
So far, Ramon just asked, can I call in the morning and afternoon, the same prospect?
You can. Since we're not leaving a voicemail in those first several dials, you absolutely can, especially if it's like a brand new lead and you see that they're super active and you really want to make contact with them. You absolutely can call the same lead in the same day. And in fact, when we get into the system, I'm going to show you that you probably will end up calling the same person in the same day. That's another good reason why we don't leave a voicemail. So that was a good question.
Absolutely, especially if the the car warranty people are going to call me multiple times a day, and I don't want anything from them. If I've signed up on your site, I'm definitely looking for a home. So at least you're providing something I want. So call me twice.
Yes,
Change up who I'm hearing from.
please. No more car warranties. Now, I can't help but notice that there was a question in the chat, and I have it up on my other screen. And I try not to pay attention to it so my focus doesn't get pulled. But I have to say that I saw where someone shared that they are not making any more dials after they've called 10 times with no answer. And I hope that when we get into the system in just a second, you're going to see why that is a flawed system. Because like I said, you never know when someone is deciding to get serious about their home search. There's, a plethora of reasons why people register and then don't move for like 6 months or a year or 2 years. And you just never know when their situation has changed, when that job promotion that they've been trying to get finally comes through, that they are about to have a baby and need more space, that it's time for them to be closer to their family. Whatever their situation is, it's changed, and now they're getting ready to make, to really get involved in the home search process. They finally have their house ready to list, whatever it is. And if you said, well, I've already called them 10 times, I'm just not going to do it anymore, you miss that opportunity. And there's so many instances on our CINC owners Facebook group where people are sharing that they have closed someone after 900 days, 2000 days. You just never know. And I don't want to see anyone leave money on the table, because there is money in your platform right now. And just because you think that you shouldn't be calling someone, you're missing it. And I don't want that to happen to anyone. That's the worst. Someone paid for that lead, and that person needs someone to help them. And so I don't want anyone giving up on any lead just because they've called them a certain number of times. I'm calling as much as I can, as long as they are in those who do I call today filters. And that's what we're about to look at in the platform. So before we flip into there, anything else, Mike, or are we good to go?
We are good to go. We have some questions on follow-up days, but that gets into our PNF system, and then that covers everything here. So we're good.
Perfect. So I'm going to flip into, this is a test site. And I notice that I'm talking a lot with my hands today. I feel like even more so than normal. So hopefully that's not distracting for everybody. This, like I said, is a test site. And by that, I mean, it is a live CINC site, but it is not owned by any team. And we typically use this for training or for, like I said, testing. So you'll see some weird names in here. You'll see some weird emails and phone numbers, and maybe a higher likelihood of invalid information because it is test information. I just wanted to point that out before we get into looking at the data of these leads, because it can look a little silly. So with that being said, I'm here in the CINC dashboard. And what I have done is I have opened up our saved filters. And if you don't see these in your site, if you happen to be following along with me, this is what it looks like when you first sign in. And what we are looking at today are saved filters. And now everyone, when your CINC site launches, is started out with these saved filters. We have typically P1, 2, and 3. If you're an older client with us, you've been around for a while, you may also have a P4, but we're not going to talk about that one today. And then we also have F1, 2, and 3. And this is, again, what everyone launches with, P1 through 3, F1 through 3. And then we're also going to talk about how to add this really great F4 filter as well today. So this is where we're going to spend the remainder of our time together. I'm also going to be pointing out some information that's very useful here on the leads dashboard as well. So I've been teasing since we started that I'm going to show you a system to make sure that if CINC says it's a good idea to call someone today, you don't miss that opportunity. And what I've been teasing all along are these saved filters. And so let's take a look at what our P filters are going to do. They are going to help us prospect. P for prospect. Other people may also say P is for priority, because prospecting should be your priority. Whichever one sounds good to you. I like to say P for prospecting. It makes me feel like I'm in Sesame Street, and I like that. So we're going to start in P1 and work our way down. So if you think back to the graphs that we were just looking at, we had best times to make contact, and we talked about time blocking and saying, I'm going to make calls this afternoon between 4:30 and 5:30. So we're going to make believe together, and we're going to say it is 4:30 p.m. and it's time for me to start my prospecting. So it's 4:30, I log into my platform, I open my saved filters, and I consider P1, 2, and 3 my prospecting to-do list. And so by that, I mean, I'm going to start at the top and click into it and work my way down. So if you are very actively working the site, this is what your P1 filter will probably look like. If you have not really been actively working it, you may have a lot more leads in here, and that's okay. We're going to help you get caught up. So P1, let's talk about what this is titled and how the P filters are designed to help you. So P1, we can see up here in this gray bar, we have a title, Saved Filter P1 Call Now. So these are leads that we want you to call now. And why are these good leads to call now? They all have this in common. And we see this blue bubble here. And in the tech world, that's what's called a breadcrumb. So think Hansel and Gretel dropping breadcrumbs so they can find their way. Essentially, these tech breadcrumbs help us know how we got here, why these leads in this filter. And we can see in this case, this has one breadcrumb, the pipeline stage of new lead. In other words, CINC went ahead and filtered by pipeline stage new lead for you. So all you had to do was open Save Filters, click into P1, and see the people that you need to call now. So we can see we've got this lead tester. Again, this is our test site. We can see their contact information, and we can see that indeed this lead is in the new lead pipeline stage. We can see that they registered 5 days ago, and you'll be able to see where they registered from, be it Google, Facebook, another campaign you happen to be running. You can see everything about them, really, what they're looking for, what their time frame to move is, when they were last on the site, and the last time we attempted to engage them. And we can see no calls yet, no emails, no texts, because there's no information here for us. We can even see if we have set a reminder for them, but this is someone we've never spoken to before, so no need for a reminder yet. And we can see all their activity on the site. And then finally, we can see who they're assigned to. So remember that agents working this platform are only going to see leads that are assigned to them here. So basically, what do I do with this person? It's 4:30. I open my platform. I click into P1. My first order of business is to call all the leads in this filter. So test tester is my only one. I'd give them a call. Now let's say test doesn't answer. That's absolutely fine. We learned that we have to be persistent, and so we are going to have to call them back later. So we are going to move that lead to attempted contact. Now, if you called with the dialer or with the CINC agent app, it will automatically move that lead to attempted contact for you because we know a call attempt was made. We will never move a lead over to contacted or beyond automatically because we don't know if you've successfully made contact with them or where in the process you are with them. So once I've moved this lead to attempted contact, because I have indeed tried to call this person, but they didn't answer, I want to leave a quick note, and I'm going to use my quick actions menu and click add a note to do that. And I'm just going to say simply that I called and I didn't leave a voicemail. You could even say called, voicemail said test. So we know that we're calling the right person here. But as we can see, this is already marked as a call note for me. And this is all we need for this situation with someone who hasn't answered. Now ignore this number 1. I just signed up for a trial of Grammarly. So that's what that's coming for. That's not a CINC indicator there. So I'm saying called, no voicemail, and I'm saving. So now let me show you something cool. If I reset, or excuse me, I'm not going to reset all because I don't want to go back to default. I want to just refresh this page. I'm going to click my little refresh button and there's no one here. Why? Because that lead no longer fits the criteria. Remember, I moved them to attempted contact. So they no longer fit the criteria. Do I need to go find them and see where they went? No, CINC will put them in the appropriate filter when it's time for me to call them again. So in this case, I have done my task. I have called everyone in P1. So I'm going to cross it off and move on to P2. So when I click into P2, now I want to draw your attention to the last lead here. And so to harken back to the question from earlier, can I call the same lead twice in one day? Notice that this lead tester is now in P2 for me. So as I'm doing my additional dials for the day, I may absolutely call this person back again. In fact, that may be helpful in a lot of cases because if we think about it, have you ever heard of the double dial? And the double dial is simply, if I called someone and they didn't answer, I hang up and I call right back. A lot of agents report that they have great answer rates when they do a double dial. So I'm not saying you want to double dial everyone that doesn't answer, but especially if there's someone, again, who's super active, someone you've made a lot of phone calls on, you may want to try a double dial occasionally to see if that can get you your answer. So I didn't do anything to move tester the lead into P2. The system did it for me based on the criteria. So let's take a look at what the lead needs to have in order to be in P2, which is our call again filter. And that makes sense, right? We just called tester before. And so now we're saying, okay, who do I need to call again? And we see 2 breadcrumbs for this one. So let's take a look at the criteria here. The registration date is sometime in the last 14 days. Tester registered 5 days ago. He's got that. And then pipeline stage of attempted contact, and he's got that. And that's why the system pulled him into P2 for you to call again. Now, in addition to that lead, we have everyone else in the system who also fits that criteria of attempted contact and registration within the last 14 days. So these are people who've been on the site for 2 weeks or less. Now we can also see here how we have some data pulling in of when the last touch was. And here on tester, we can see we did a phone call roundabout now. So here we're continuing the same process of making our dials, and we simply call down the list, moving pipeline stages as necessary, adding notes. So let's go ahead and take tester for our example. And let's say we gave Test a call and they answered and we had a great conversation. And to me, this is what a great conversation is. It's when I come away from that call and I know the 3 W's. So what are those? It is what the lead is looking for, when they're looking to move, and why they're looking to move. And the why is their motivation. So let's say I talk to this lead tester and I'm able to find the 3 W's out. I might even consider it to be a successful call if I have 2 out of the 3, but it is definitely a great call if I can come away with all 3. So let's say I spoke to Tess, I was able to find those out. What are my steps that I take to keep this lead's profile current? I'm going to move them to contacted. I'm going to go back to quick actions and add a note. Only this time, I'm going to leave a little bit more detail. I want a note of all those 3 W's and the information that I found out with them. So I'm going to put in here what they're looking for or their criteria, right? You notice I'm putting these in a list. I personally think that's easier to follow up on and read when I come back later instead of a big long paragraph full of all this information. So I'm going to put when or their time frame. I'm going to put why or their motivation. Now, if you want help being able to find out this information from a lead, definitely join our bi-weekly Monday role play and scripting webinar. Or of course, you can also come to CINC and get the full in-person CINC experience, where we have a full conversion day where we talk all about scripting and objection handling, opening lines, setting appointments. We also cover that online in our bi-weekly Monday webinar. And you can also watch past recordings of that on cincommunity.com/webinars. I'm done with my plugging now. So notice I also put in here details, and that is the lead married? Are they divorcing? Where do they work? Do they have children? Is there a family member helping them with this decision? Any details you find out about this is going to help you a ton in your follow-up calls when you are trying to build some additional rapport and set that appointment with the lead. Now, at this point, this is a really powerful note. It's got a lot of good information in it. And so I'm going to want to pin this. Now, if you've been with CINC for a while, the pin feature used to be called sticky, but it's the same concept. We used to stick notes up to the top when they were important, but now we pin them to the top. And this just means that if I add additional notes later, this one's going to stay at the top above everything else because it's the most important. Now you can also notify people at this point. So potentially a lender who's working on the site with you, potentially a team lead, and you need to get this person assigned to you from a pond account. Lots of different reasons why you might want to notify someone here, but we love to do it straight from the system. So we're able to successfully keep everything in one place. So I'm not quite done. If you recall earlier, I said when tester was a new lead, I had not spoken to them. I said, there's no reason to have a reminder on this person because we've never spoken to them yet. And really, the only reminder you can have for someone that you haven't spoken to yet is simply to call them again. And that is what the P filters are here to do. Instead of having to answer to a ton of reminders popping up all day saying, call this person with no other detail, that's what the P filters do. The P filter will have everyone there in one list for you to call. But now that we have successfully spoken to tester, I'm not calling every day trying to get that connection made again. Now I'm following up based on their time frame and based on their information. So as soon as I move someone to contacted and I've successfully left that note, my next step is to add a reminder to follow up. And the best practice here is we want to be following up with someone that has a pretty typical time frame of like 6 months to a year and a half, every 30 days or so. Because if you remember what I mentioned earlier, we never really know when someone's situation changes. And just because they said a year today doesn't mean that they're going to move like a year to the day in 2022, right? So we just want to be cognizant that people's situation changes a lot. And if someone says they want to move in a year, waiting 9 months to call them means that you may be hearing, hey, we actually moved last month because we found a great deal, or we had a great, kind of situation pop up for us. So when we call every 30 days or so, we are able to not only build better rapport and have someone really know, like, and trust us, which they have to do business with us, but we're also going to potentially catch them in a time where their time frame has changed and they're ready to get going. So most of your reminders I would leave as call type, unless someone says that they prefer email or a text, and other could be text. Other can also be to drop something off at their home. It can be to send them something in the mail. It can be to pop by. It can be anything that's not a call or an email. But you build the most rapport when we're following up on the phone. So I would leave most as call. So for details here, this is going to be where you can put in, some agents will copy and paste the first note. Some agents will put just a kind of brief detail in here about what to talk about. Some will just put in like one kind of shining detail, like if they're trying to move into the neighborhood that you live in, for example, then you might want to bring that up on the call. But we never want to leave it blank, because when this reminder pops up throughout the day, we want to be able to really quickly react and make that call instead of having to go back and, open up the profile and read through all the notes. So if I spoke to them today on June 1st, happy June, by the way, I'm going to be looking to call them around July 1st. Now, if that was following on a Saturday or Sunday and you don't necessarily want to do follow-up calls that day, you could always pick a day or two, plus or minus the 30 days or the month out. But since this is a Thursday, I'm going to be calling on the same day. Now, I can schedule this for a certain time. Agents that are really successfully time block their reminders or their follow-up times as well. So you may say, I'm going to do all my reminders at 1:30. So that way you get reminded at 1:30. If you are not time blocking your follow-up, one thing I recommend to do is to have everything scheduled for like 8 or 8:30 in the morning. And that way, if you're like me and you're super easily distracted, and when you're in the zone, if you got a pop up on your phone saying reminder to call tester, and you'd have a hard time refocusing back to the task that you were on, you may want to have everything hit at the same time in the morning. And you just know that you have to do that sometime throughout the day. And then we'll save that, and we'll follow back up on follow-ups in a moment when we complete our P2 and our P3. So now I have moved the lead to contacted. I've added a note. I've added a reminder. I have one final task that I need to do before I can move on to my next person, my next phone call. And that is to come to the leads activity tab and click into, or activity column, I should say, and click into the saved search, the yellow here where it says one saved. So you notice they've got a big search here in the city of Canton, 7 beds, at least 5 baths, between 472 and 577. So let's say I spoke to them and they not only were interested in Canton, but they also were interested in another nearby city. Maybe they would ideally like 7 beds, but they could do with 5. They could also do with only 4 baths, and their price point actually goes up to more like $650. So I need to make some changes, because this saved search is what drives the property alerts. And property alerts are those defaulted to daily emails that go out with a handful of homes that matches the lead search. So if I'm only sending them homes that fit this criteria, but not everything that they said, I may not be as engaging to them as I could be. And the property alerts are the #1 driver of traffic back to your site. They are incredibly good at keeping people engaged. If you are setting people up on matrix searches and MLS searches on other systems, I highly recommend that you filter it all through here and use the CINC save search, because it is so powerful. It keeps your site sticky. It keeps people coming back, and you're able to see if they've opened the email, if they have clicked on anything, what homes they viewed, how many times they viewed it, if they favorited it. Keep all your data in one system. It makes the system much more powerful. So how do I edit it and include that additional information? I'm going to click my edit button, and that's going to open our saved search page here. Now you'll notice up here at the top, I do have search filters and search results. Right now I have 0. So right now there's no way for us to engage this lead because there are no properties that match this search. So if you were to see this, that's again another clue that we need to adjust to this so they start to be engaged by those property alerts. So let's say they were also interested in the city of Woodstock. And notice I just started to type a city in. Trying to think of another city nearby. We'll just throw in another one here. I let my drop-down menu open up and I selected it here. So now I've not only got Canton like original, I also have Woodstock and Marietta, And notice these are more breadcrumbs. So we can use another tech term that we learned earlier. Now, if I scroll down, I can also say that they only wanted, at least 4. For baths, maybe they said they could do with, 3 or 4. I've already got some results coming up here. If their max price point was $650, now you kind of have to use your judgment of your market and your knowledge of your market here. Are you seeing that people need room to go above asking? And so maybe we don't want to use their max price here because we need some wiggle room to make our offers or negotiate. Or maybe that there is, in other times where the market's not so crazy, that you can negotiate down a little bit. And so you might say, well, really, they can go up to like $680 because I bet I can be an awesome agent and get them a better deal. Whatever that may be, put your price in here. And then other fields you may want to take a look at are property type. And this will make sure that no townhomes or condos show up if they only want single family, for example. Or you could say they are interested in single family or a townhome. So you can't have multiple here. And then finally, we don't have it on this site because this is a test site, but under other settings, this is where you can come in and you can actually say MLS status. So most sites do have a drop-down menu here that says MLS status. And you can say only send active homes, or you can include active and pending. If you don't have that field here and you'd like it, call in CINC support and request that, and they can get it added for you. So as I scroll down, I can get more specific, but those are really the top ones that I want to look at: price, beds, baths, and location. Once I have all those changes made, of course, I need to save my changes. Most important button on the screen, and it is small and right beside delete. So make sure we're not deleting, make sure we're saving, and then we can actually toggle over and see the results. Here's everything plotted on that map, and here are the results. So Mike, I'll pause here. Any questions at all on this system of what to do with leads once they are contacted?
No further questions have come through. Doing a great job.
Thank you. I hope that it's because I'm doing a great job and not because everyone is very confused. So remember that we do have the chat if you do have any questions for Mike and myself. Awesome. So we just went through the system of what to do when we contact a lead. So far, we have gone through P1 and P2, but we also have one final P3 filter, and this is my favorite one. We can see that this one is called call active, and it just so happens that we don't have anyone that fits the criteria because this is a test site again, and that's going to make sense when we talk about the criteria. This test site, normally we make a lead once and then we don't ever use it again because we needed to test something specific. So we're not logging back in. We're not checking property alerts. This is not like a real site in that way. So that's why we don't have anyone in this call active filter, because no one's active on this site. We use the test lead once and then we move on. So let's talk about why that is the case, why we don't see anyone here. So we have 3 breadcrumbs here. We have registration date, and it says custom date range. And that date range is anywhere between 15 days ago they registered up to 5,000 days ago they registered. So they have been on the site for more than 2 weeks, or they have been on the site for under 5,000 days. So again, 15 days to 5,000 days. So that is kind of newer people and older people. But the second piece of criteria is, in addition to that time frame, they also have to have logged in the last 30 days. So that's why we don't see anyone here. No one on this site logs in again. On your site, however, you're going to see these active people. And this kind of speaks to the question, from earlier, or the point from earlier. I don't call anyone after 10 dials. If you are not calling people in this filter, you will probably have called someone at least 10 times in here. But the site is telling you this is a great time to call them because they registered a while ago, but they're active again. And the pipeline stage is attempted contact, meaning that we've never spoken to them before. So these are people with the opportunity to connect. They're actively logging in and they're further along in their time frame. So these are our kind of low-hanging fruit, people who are further along in the time frame, active, and we have an opportunity to connect with them. So these leads right here, we would use the same method of calling through the list, adjusting pipeline stage if necessary. And if we do move them to contacted or even to appointment set, we are adding the note, adding the reminder, and adjusting the lead saved search. That is our method, excuse me, for prospecting. And our call blocks that we have blocked on our calendars, or if we are out and about, maybe using the app to do this on the go whenever we have time, we are calling through P1, P2, P3, Monday through Friday. Those are our times that we are persistent and consistent. So it's not just, I'm going to hit it really hard this week, and then next week I'm going to take off and not do anything. It's doing that week in, week out. So I want to pause really quickly before we get into follow-up filters and ask Mike if there is anything else we need to talk about when it comes to prospecting.
Yeah, just had a couple questions come in that tie into when you're setting those reminders before, because that's what triggers those F filters we're going to go into. What frequency, how often should we be following up with those people and setting those reminders?
So the rule of thumb is 30 days, and I didn't go in depth on this, and I probably should have. If someone's situation is that they are moving like within 3 months or sooner, I might even do it a little more frequently. And where if someone is like 2 years out because they're like planning for retirement, let's say, you can absolutely talk to them about, well, getting into a home now, we can rent it, you can start building some equity. So there are some, objection handlers you can hold there. But if someone really is 2 years out, then I maybe would do it like every 3 months or so. But good rule of thumb is every 30 days for your typical internet lead. And by that, I mean someone that's moving like, 6 months to a year. Or 18 months. And that's kind of the sweet spot for a lot of internet leads, but it really is dependent on their situation. I would just caution a lot of times when we say, oh, it depends on the situation, then a lot of people take that opportunity to say, well, I'm going to do it in 6 months because they said they want to move in 8 months. Don't fall into that habit. Every 30 days is typical, but it can, wiggle dependent on their situation.
Absolutely. I know when I first started 6 or so years ago, I think our best practice was whatever the time frame to buy is, cut it in half. And as the markets have like sped up and you're seeing like people being able to convert internet leads faster and faster, we're finding that you're having to follow up more consistently. So that 30 days, that good benchmark. Teams in really hot markets have kind of pushed that down to the 2 week period. And it's not necessarily that you're calling them every 2 weeks, but you're checking in, making sure their login counts are still there, that they're still logging in, they're still viewing properties, they haven't fallen off your site. So that follow-up can be a lot of different things, and it's not just about that phone call follow-up. It's about, checking in and all sorts of ways, keeping, staying ever present in that home buying process, and following up on those action items that you discussed on your call when you get contact with them as well.
Yeah, and remember that this can be something that you do time block. So you can have these reminders where you're saying, okay, from 1:30 to 2:30 every day, I'm going to work my reminders, or I'm going to have my assistant work my reminders, or my ISA work reminders, whatever the system is. Just make sure that you are, being consistent with it. If you miss a reminder, and we'll get into this a little bit more in just a moment when we get into the F filters, which, spoiler alert, that's for follow-up. We'll get more into that there, but this is something else you just have to consistently be staying on top of, because you've probably heard the adage that the fortune's in the follow-up. So if you have a great first conversation, but you don't reach back out to someone until like a year later, I cannot tell you how many times I've been doing, call blocks with teams and they get someone that says they just bought, and you just missed that opportunity had you just called a little bit earlier. Anything else, Mike?
No, I think that is it. Oh, Ramon asked, is it good to send the mobile app to prospects? I know we see a higher download rate on leads that you've already contacted, because it's rather than just getting a random app from a random number, asking it to be downloaded, they've made contact with you, and you can kind of sell the benefits of being connected to you as their only agent, getting instant notifications of new properties that hit the market, and having a better opportunity to stay connected with just you without their information going to any agent in the market there. So definitely worth sending. I know some teams do go ahead and send it sooner than that contact rate. That's absolutely fine to go ahead and do, to get it in their hands sooner. It helps kind of build that connection to you as their agent. But as far as like getting the download actually through and not just sending it out to send it, we see that higher download rate on contacted leads, just because you've already built that rapport up and they kind of trust where the app is coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what I have on the screen here is where you can do a one-click to send an invite, and this goes out via text. So if I click this here, that would automatically send an invitation text to download the Edit app. And the Edit app, if you're not familiar, is our home searcher app. So if I was a prospect on your site, I can download the app, and it's basically a mobile-friendly version of your site with some cool features that makes it easy for them to stay connected.
And then we have a couple questions on frequency of follow-up that we'll throw to the end, so we can go ahead and get the F filters taken care of, and then go into that frequency on top of what those F filters provide for us here at the end.
Awesome. So yeah, I know we're at an hour. Hopefully you can stick with me for about 5 more minutes to get through the F filters. And so let's talk really quickly on our time blocking. So I mentioned just a few minutes ago, time blocking to do your follow-up. So let's say it's 1:30 to 2:30 every day. When 1:30 hits, I'd be again working through the system the same way I did for my P filters, except now I'm switching. I'm wearing my follow-up hat instead of my prospecting hat. And so our F filters here are going to be anyone that I have set a reminder on that is due today or it's overdue. And of course, because we're in the F1 filter, these are for leads that I need to call today, because let me pull up our new reminder window. I said that I wanted to be reminded to call them. Where on the flip side, F2 has my email reminder types. And this is something I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm emailing follow-ups to typical prospects unless they specifically requested emails, or if it is something that I'm sending that needs to be attached, like a certain document or a certain PDF or something of the sort. I'm not, big. We are seeing email become harder and harder to break through in someone's inbox. So I don't think it's as powerful as a text or a phone call. So you can set email reminders, but it's not my number one choice. It is here though for those instances where they've requested it, or you do need to send something specific. And then our F3 is that other type. Anything that's not a call or not an email is marked as other, and those are here. And again, it's going to be everything that's due today or overdue. So let's head back to F1 just because that's our typical one. And we see here today and overdue, and that's what our negative means here. -6 days, -11 days. Again, this is a test site, so it's not as clean as it should be. -19 days, and it will hold here until you mark it as complete, because again, we never want you to miss the opportunity. So once it has been completed, I'm going to click into the leads profile here. I'll show you where you can mark it as complete. You're going to go into the Reminders and Plans tab and simply check the box that it's been completed. So now I have to continue to follow up. So I'm going to add a new reminder here. and the process rotates again. So that is F1, 2, and 3. Now, I promised that we'd talk about our F4 filter, which is the danger filter. And this is something that was developed by a trainer at CINC who's been around from the early days. I think he's one of the first 10 employees, named Eric Grafner. So he really knows his stuff. And a few years ago, he was noticing a problem where agents were marking leads as contacted, but not adding a reminder to them. So if they were contacted, they were no longer pulling into the P filters. And if they didn't have a reminder, they weren't pulling into the F filters. So they were essentially lost in the system. So Eric came up with this great idea for the F4 or danger filter, because these leads are a danger to your paycheck, or you can consider they are in danger of falling through the cracks, whichever one you like. But these are leads that are essentially lost in the system. So he set up the danger filter, which is these are leads that have a reminder date that has not been set. And then the other breadcrumb is pipeline, contacted being the pipeline choice here. So we can see all these leads are indeed contacted and they do not have a reminder. So let me show you how you can set this up for yourself. So I'm going to hit reset all to go back to default, meaning back to where we started, no filters, nothing selected here. And I'm going to show you how you can create the danger filter, but then you can use this process to create any saved filter you'd like, because the process is super easy. So in this case, I need to select leads that have do not have a reminder set and are in the pipeline stage of contacted. So let's start by saying I want to see leads that have a next reminder date. And these filters are alphabetical, so they're pretty easy to find. So next reminder date that is not set. But now I need another breadcrumb up here. Remember, I need to also see leads that the pipeline stage is contacted. So now that I have everything set up here, I've got my not set reminders and contacted. How do I save these into their own filter? So I'm going to go back to my filters list to do that. And you notice right here in blue, it says save current filters. So if you find yourself doing the same filter set over and over again, this is a really great time saver, because you can save those as your own custom saved filters. So to save the danger filter in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and click Save Current Filters. And I'm going to name it. I'm going to put an extra special webinar in there so I can remember to delete this one later, and click Save. So now if you needed to work this filter later, it is very nicely right in your saved filters list. Now, if I'm a team lead and I want to make this available to all of my agents, it's very easy to do that. I just click my pencil icon, which I use for editing, and I mark it as public. If I did not mark it as public, it would only be visible to me as the person who created it. So your agents can make their own and not share them with the team. But if you're finding that something is working really well for someone, you may want to create that and share it with the team. This is one I would say everyone that makes phone calls on the team would need. And you can work this into the kind of daily follow-up time block that you set. Just a quick peek into F4 to make sure that everything is looking good in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can also delete ones that you are not using anymore, so you can keep things clean and not really junked up and hard to use. The delete button will allow you to take that out. So that is a brief overview of our F filters and how to create your own saved filters. Both are going to be game changers for anyone who's not currently utilizing the P or the F filters, or for someone who needs to save some time on their workflows. And now you can set up some saved filters of your own. So with that being said, I want to open the floor for last minute questions. We've got about 5 minutes left together to get all those last minute questions answered. So Mike, I will throw it over to you to let me know what people are curious about.
Absolutely. So Victor just has some additional questions on the frequency of follow-up. Asking like what situations you would follow up every day. Are there situations that you would, does it make sense to do that? Would you ever follow up once a week? I have some ideas, but if you want to start, I can add to.
Sure. Another thing that I picked up from Eric Grappner, who developed the danger filter, is something called like the best friend rule. And so I kind of use this in a lot of instances now, even in my personal life. I'm basically I'm doing what's in the best interest of the person and giving them advice and service like I would my best friend. So if I know that my best friend has a really tight time frame and they need to get in a house by a certain time, I'm not waiting 30 days to check in with them just because it's the best practice, right? If someone has a super fast time frame and you know that working backwards, well, it's going to take us, this amount of time from the time they go under contract until it closes. And to go under contract, it's probably going to take X amount of time for them to find a home, right? We're kind of, again, reverse engineering, working backwards. If you know it's going to take about 2 months for the whole process for someone, I'm not waiting a month to call them and then losing that month of time that you had to work together. So that's kind of a circular way of saying that if it's in their best interest to follow up sooner, because as an agent you have the expertise to know that they cannot wait to get their time frame taken care of or to find what they're looking for, advise them on that. And you can tell them, I'm going to follow up next week so we can set something up, or so I can check in. You can let them know that that's going to happen. So again, kind of like I said earlier, it really is going to depend on their situation. If the situation calls for it, absolutely. If you feel like they had a lot of questions and you want to call and just check in sooner, you absolutely can. But I would really kind of play it by ear with people. Are they receptive to that? What's in their best interest? Again. And so to me, I think it's important that, it's not a one size fits all, everyone's cookie cutter and falls into the same scenario where every 30 days will be perfect for them. So take it by their situation, but also know that you have a lot of work going on. So if you can't follow up with everyone within 2 weeks, that's okay, because not everyone needs it. So Mike, what did you want to add?
Absolutely. So just the way I was rereading the question there a little bit, and I couldn't tell if it was towards follow-up or prospect. So just attacking both. If it's a new lead or attempted contact, absolutely call that lead, every day, at least during the business week, trying to get them on the phone, because that's the whole goal is converting that person from someone you haven't contacted to someone you have. And then the follow-ups on your contacted leads, we have that best practice of 2 weeks to 30 days, depending on kind of what their time frame is, giving you some recommended best practice on follow-up, giving you that kind of middle of the road. If I'm like, don't know where that conversation went, I know it was a quality conversation, but I'm not quite sure how often to follow up, we've given you the middle of the road best practice of 2 weeks to 30 days. And then your industry knowledge, your expertise of actually being on the ground, making the dials, talking to those clients is going to help dictate what you do in all those different situations. Because there are going to be some situations where you follow up every day. Maybe someone like Kayla said, it's a really hot move. I have to move into my home in 3 weeks. So we have to get this hammered out. We have to get this deal done. And then there are other people who are like, no, I don't really know. I could move now, or I could move, whenever. And that's someone you might not follow up with as frequently. So work the best practices. If you're unsure, use the best practice. If you know that, hey, this is a really hot person, adjust it a little. Don't be afraid to kind of take what we've worked across, teams of all sizes, of all shapes, of all, across the country, different markets. We've built this best practice and then kind of tailor off of that to what suits your needs.
Absolutely. So yeah, don't, with prospecting, you're calling as often as it takes to get someone contacted. And it just so happens that we're going to show you the leads that you need to call that day. So don't worry about digging through. Like if you log in and you've got 500 leads assigned to you, how frustrating would it be to have to comb through those looking for the people that it's time to call? That's what the filters are for. P filters are going to show you daily who you need to call that you haven't spoken to yet. So prospecting is for the people you haven't spoken to yet. Daily, your F filters are going to show you who it's time to follow up with, the people that you have set a reminder that it's time to follow up with them. And then I think that's when it comes into, if you find other saved filters that you like to work with, add those into your workflow. You know, if you like to check daily people who have logged in recently, who registered a long time ago, and they also have a house to sell, whatever, you know, set those up and use them. You can absolutely roll those into your kind of daily prospecting and follow-up time. And yeah, I just saw that Mike put in the scripting and role play webinar link to register. The next live one is going to be not next week, but the week after. So definitely sign up for that. And in the meantime, you can watch all of our great recordings that are on cincommunity.com/webinars. What else, Mike?
I just added the link to all of our the scripting and roleplay webinar link, all of our webinars, as well as the PNF filter help document to cover what we covered today with the PNF filters.
Awesome.
I think that's everything.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for all of your really thoughtful and great questions today. I know that it makes it a lot more fun for the moderator to have some great questions. And it also makes it enjoyable for me to be able to see exactly what you're curious about and where you need, you know, some guidance. And that's what we're all about. You know, we want to give you the training that's really applicable to what you need to, you know, make the most money and be as successful as you can. And this system right here is going to be what puts you in front of more leads, not only on the phone, but also in person to set your appointments, you know, to be doing your consultations and, you know, in your face-to-face appointments. So using this system, it really is foolproof. It's prospecting to talk to more people. It's following up to continue to build rapport. It's setting your appointments. It's making sure that the system is working for you. So today we talked a lot about what you can do, you know, day in, day out. What we did not talk about was what you can automate. And so that's going to be what we talk about on Thursday. So here is cincommunity.com/webinars. This is where you can sign up for our Thursday webinar, where Mike will be presenting on auto tracks and behavioral messaging. And then of course, we also have our recording galleries here with all of our past sessions, including some on AI and some specifically for our site owners. So tons of information here. And then of course, as you're getting vaccinated and you're able to leave your house, please consider joining us at CINC University. That's our 3-day course in Atlanta or in Phoenix. And we'll also be in Chicago in November. And we're looking at adding a new date in October as well. So this website is updated constantly with all the new information on training that you need. So please reach out and let us know if you have any questions about our webinars or in-person training. Just know that we are always here to help you get the most out of the system and to work as efficiently as you can and have the most success possible. Our next CINC course is in Atlanta in July, this July 20th through the 22nd, and you can see all the dates here and click to register, as well as get tons of information about joining us here. So we really hope that you'll join us live. If you cannot be with us live, know that all of our webinars are still going to be available to you. We're going to help you however you need. So thank you so much again for the great questions. Thank you for spending over an hour with us today. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week. And please reach out if there's absolutely anything that we can do to help you feel even more comfortable working on the CINC platform. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody. You're welcome.